We're back for another episode of UFC Main Event Pick'em Show. We have Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, South Africa versus Nigeria. Dricus Du Plessis is 21-2. Adesanya is 24-3, notably losing 2 of his last 3 fights. So let's go over Adesanya's recent record and talk about who's gonna win. So he loses to Jan Blachowicz in 2021 after a legendary streak at middleweight. Then he fights Marvin Vettori, beats him in a rather unimpressive fashion. Defends the belt against Robert Whittaker, which was a very close fight. In my opinion, that could have gone either way. Then he beats Jared Cannonier in another unimpressive fashion. Then he actually loses the belt to Alex Pereira, avenges his loss to Alex Pereira in 2023, and then loses the belt again to Sean Strickland in a shocking upset. Let's take a look at Dricus Du Plessis' recent record. So, he comes into the UFC, just destroys Marcus Perez, pretty easy win. Also destroys Trevin Giles. He actually was losing that fight, but he landed a beautiful right cross and then finished him off on the ground. Beat the shit out of Brad Tavares for 15 minutes. Beat the shit out of Darren Till. Then fought Derek Brunson in a fight that was very reminiscent of Cannonier's win against Derek Brunson. Then he fights Robert Whittaker, beating him in a shocking upset, and then beats Sean Strickland by split decision. In my opinion, I thought that Dricus did beat Sean Strickland, maybe losing rounds 1 and 5, but winning rounds 2, 3, and 4. That was a controversial decision. A lot of people that like Sean Strickland thought he won, which I can see. But I think Dricus Du Plessis did a really good job of putting some true damage on to Sean Strickland in those middle rounds there, landing some really big shots, blooding up Strickland's eye, causing him to reel backwards. And we also saw some good grappling used in that fight by Dricus. Dricus's stats, he has anti-cardio basically, where he gets more exhausted, but the more exhausted he gets, actually the more he does. His strike numbers went up every single round in that Sean Strickland fight, which is just crazy. Like, Dricus Du Plessis' cardio boggles my mind because he constantly looks like he's about to collapse, and yet his output just increases. He's like some kind of superhero or anime character. Let's talk about Israel Adesanya. So I think that there's a big argument to be made that he is on the decline. How old is this guy? So Israel Adesanya is 35, definitely past, but definitely on the tail end of his prime, if not out of his prime. So let's just take a bit of a more critical look at his performances. His fight against Yoel Romero, extremely boring, but he clearly won that fight. He was just trying to stay safe from Yoel's power, land leg kicks. That was a strike that was working for him. He was scoring leg kicks. Kudos to him. You do what you need to do to win the fight. I have no complaints about that. Then he fights Paulo Costa. Amazing performance. In my opinion, Israel's best performance in the UFC. Basically just destroys Costa's leg and then moves in for the kill, knocking him out in the second round. And that was a shutout performance. I think that was peak Adesanya. He's on cloud 9, moves up to light heavyweight and fights Jan Blachowicz. Does lose that fight. I thought that he played it very cautiously, too cautiously in the end. Jan Blachowicz was able to compete with him on the feet. He did win rounds on the feet. And then he was really able to solidify his win by getting takedowns. Fights Marvin Vettori. Very boring fight. Marvin Vettori just held him up against the cage. Izzy did, he defended takedowns, kind of shut Marvin Vettori out, but he wasn't really able to open up the way that he eventually did against Paulo Costa. Fights Robert Whittaker. Again, an extreme chess match. Same with Jan Blachowicz. Whittaker had slightly less impactful takedowns, and I think that if he was able to get Izzy to the ground and land ground and pound in the same way Blachowicz did, he could have won that fight. But again, kind of a back and forth chess match with Robert Whittaker. Against Jared Cannonier, Izzy did much the same as he did with Vettori. Just tried to stay safe and pick his shots when he could, score with leg kicks mostly, and score with jabs. Another pretty boring fight. I thought that Jared Cannonier really let himself down with that performance. I thought he could have done much more than he did. Alex Pereira, that's one of my favorite fights of all time. Alex Pereira versus Adesanya in MMA #1. Pereira, famously, he did win the first round against he lost the first round against Adesanya because Adesanya did rock him with that big punch at the end of round 1. Then Pereira comes back, wins the second round, and then round 3, Adesanya wrestles Pereira, which is really interesting because it showed Adesanya was he was not confident in his striking against Pereira. He continuously tried to get it to the clinch, and he wanted to wrestle Pereira. So that was really interesting. It was a clear indicator that Adesanya was not comfortable outstriking Pereira. But Pereira just beats down his body. He beats down his legs. People want to say that he caught Adesanya in round 5. That's not true. He was systematically breaking Adesanya's body until Adesanya could no longer keep himself safe. And that's when Alex Pereira was able to put the screws on him, knocking him out on round 5. Their second fight started off much the same way, where Alex Pereira was landing some really good shots to the body, really good shots to the leg, jabbing Adesanya's face up. I thought Pereira won round 1, and I thought he was beating him up in round 2, and Adesanya did a great job of defending Pereira's strikes and waiting for an opening, and he caught Alex Pereira with that opening in round 2. But then he fights Sean Strickland, gets dropped in round 1, wins round 2, but then loses rounds 3, 4, and 5. It's just he just got outpaced and outpressured by Sean Strickland, and he wasn't able to find his footing. So I think there is an argument to be made that we're seeing the decline of Adesanya right before our eyes. Against his peak performance against Paulo Costa, then we have a loss against Blachowicz where he looked fine. He wins 3 in a row, all close and boring fights, loses to Pereira, is losing to Pereira in the second fight, but then he catches him in round 2, and then loses all of the Sean Strickland fight. So I think there is an argument to be made that Izzy's been losing his last 3 fights in a row. Against Dricus Du Plessis, how old is Still Knox? Dricus Du Plessis is 30. He is 5 years younger than Adesanya. We know that he has extremely good cardio. We've seen Izzy get his body broken down by his opponents. Sean Strickland was able to use his cardio to his advantage. Alex Pereira was systematically breaking Adesanya down. Even Jan Blachowicz was able to take down Adesanya in the later rounds because he was kind of getting him hypnotized with his striking. I think Dricus Du Plessis can do something similar to Jan Blachowicz. I don't think the skill level in kickboxing difference is going to be that large, and I do think there is going to be a discrepancy on the ground, at least in the power of Dricus Du Plessis' takedowns. I do think he's going to be able to get Israel Adesanya down. We saw him take down Sean Strickland. We've seen Izzy get taken down by similar brawler type guys like Jan Blachowicz, like Marvin Vettori. I think Izzy's going to get taken down. I think we're going to see Dricus Du Plessis by decision. Is it possible that he knocks out Adesanya? Yeah, I think it's possible. Is it possible that Adesanya knocks him out? I don't know. That's going to be really tough for me to see. I think Adesanya is going to be trying to play it really safe, and when he tries to play it safe, his knockout power isn't there that much. He was able to knock out Alex Pereira, and that's because Pereira was really opening up on him there. So we can see him catching Dricus Du Plessis with a big shot. But 2 things there. Du Plessis definitely has a better chin than Pereira at middleweight. Pereira was cutting a ton of weight there. And Du Plessis is younger. He just has... he's cutting less weight than Pereira was. He's taken less damage on the chin than Pereira has. I think that we're going to see Du Plessis land some big shots on Izzy. Maybe wobble him, rock him. Some close rounds, and I think that Du Plessis is actually going to be able to put a good pace on Adesanya and win in the later rounds. Maybe close rounds 1, 2, and 3, and then clear rounds 4 and 5 for Du Plessis. What is the path for Adesanya to win? Adesanya he's got to keep off of the takedowns, and he's got to keep moving. But we've seen his footwork get less and less effective as the level of competition has increased. He wasn't able to outstrike Alex Pereira. He wasn't able to outstrike Sean Strickland. Even Jan Blachowicz was very competitive on the feet. I think that Du Plessis is going to be able to track Izzy down, and all of this stance switching, all of this lateral footwork isn't going to be as effective as it is against strikers like Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero, Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. I think that Du Plessis is a level above those guys. I mean, he outstruck Robert Whittaker, and we know that Robert Whittaker is basically the same skill level as Adesanya on the feet. So that's my prediction. Dricus Du Plessis by decision, possibly by a late fight TKO. But let me know your guys' thoughts. We're pretty close to the fight, so let's enjoy them. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good rest of your night.